My desire to pursue a PhD began when I was at secondary school in the UK. The teachers in my state school music department were brilliant. They were passionate and instilled a real desire in me to connect with others through music. I loved the classroom environment so much that I often thought I would like to do that forever. Fast forward 12 years, and I suppose I am still on track to do that. I began an undergraduate programme in music at Manchester University straight after school, but dropped out after 8 months due to long-term struggles with my mental health. I went back to Bristol University 2 years after that, and in those 2 years, I got on top of my mental health with support from family, friends, and the NHS. I also taught class music lessons at a local primary school, which helped me regain my confidence, my interest in socialising, and really reignited my desire to study. I had a brilliant time as an undergraduate and really found my niche. I was involved with student societies, completed academic internships, made a solo transatlantic trip to complete archival work, and presented at 2 conferences. By the time I finished the undergraduate programme, I had really doubled down on my goal to pursue a PhD. I went to Cambridge University for my MPhil programme in September 2019, and then everything shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020. I finished my dissertation in lockdown and then took 2 years out, working firstly as a vaccinator and then in student administration before beginning PhD studies. I didn't really want to be a student in lockdown. I began my DTP-funded PhD programme back at the Music Department of Bristol University in September 2023, and I cannot overstate how much I am enjoying it. I've always been interested in music, people, and their experiences, specifically within the queer community, my community. My PhD project reflects this, and my greatest motivator is that I want my work to contribute to better understanding and representation of the queer community in both queer and non-queer spaces. On reflection, I'm really proud of my journey to my PhD project. I think it helps demonstrate that there's no right way and no singular way in which to arrive at a PhD. You don't need to rush through education to get to it. You don't need to sacrifice your health trying to get to it. You don't need to come from a certain background, and you don't need to pick a topic that is traditional or just reinforces established ways of working or thinking about things, especially if your heart isn't in it. Before applying, I did have worries about how my arguably non-traditional project would come across in an application. My methodology is predominantly ethnographical and autoethnographical and relies on fieldwork to produce the dataset. I was worried about receiving support when my own identity forms part of this dataset. Studying yourself and your own identity does demand a lot of energy, and switching that off when you're having downtime or doing anything else is difficult and inevitably does bleed into your personal life. Something that helped to alleviate these worries was finding community. At the DTP induction, we were made aware of the student-led research clusters, and I joined the queer cluster. Being in community with fellow queer researchers, many of whose identities are also intertwined with their topics, helped me feel less isolated and gave me a space to relate to others. I really recommend looking at the DTP website and finding out about what clusters already exist and where you might find your community. And there's always the option to form your own cluster too. For me, joining the queer cluster is one of many ways that I have established a queer research network support. I am a diversity and inclusivity advocate for the DTP, and I have also found community at my institutions through things like queer-centred conferences and working in shared spaces as a way to get to know people. I also look out for training sessions run on researcher wellbeing and how to manage mental health whilst researching topics that might affect it, so I feel supported that way too. Navigating the application process can feel daunting. I remember that really vividly. My advice is to look on the DTP website, identify the different aspects of the application, and form a structure for each. Speak with your proposed supervisors and get their advice. Draft your application and ask people to proofread it. Friends, supervisors, colleagues, whoever you have on hand. Your project idea and how you articulate it can be thought of as the meat of the application, but considering a placement and how you and your project align with your supervisors and institutions shouldn't be ignored or left to the last minute, as it can really enhance your application. Look on your institution websites, look for existing research networks and groups within the relevant faculties. What could you gain from them? How would being an active member of these groups enhance your PhD and increase its reach? My time out of academia between my MPhil and my PhD gave me time to really hone in on my topic and what contribution I wanted to make within academia, but also beyond academia. I considered what my outputs could be beyond the thesis itself: conference presentations, founding and directing an ethnography group, public engagement. Specifically, how can I involve the queer community in Bristol in my queer research about Bristol? I made sure these outputs were realistic and that I gave myself ample opportunities to create impact. I strongly advise thinking about how your project could create impact. How can you take your research beyond the proverbial walls of academia? Think about public engagement, outreach, and community building. You could look at the Impact Case Studies section and the SWWDTP blog section on the DTP website to see what others have done. The DTP Instagram account also features examples of this. My personal experience of doing a PhD as a member of a marginalised community has been really positive. Whilst I was nervous in some respects, I have found that most people and most departments want to help you and want to facilitate a good experience. There are initiatives in place where people are specifically trying to improve PhD experience for those from underrepresented communities. In my case, this has looked like the PGR trans and non-binary socials that my primary institution puts on. It also looks like the PGR trans and non-binary panel that was assembled at my primary institution to advise on how to make improvements on research processes, ethics committees, and embedding trans-inclusive language into policy and marketing. It can also look like the SWWDTP Diversity and Inclusivity Advocate Programme, which I am an advocate in. This student-led advocate programme was set up to develop the DTP Diversity and Inclusion Framework into a programme of activities and support for current and prospective students with support from the DTP Hub team. This programme aims to improve the experiences of those from underrepresented communities and those experiencing barriers to access within and outside the DTP postgraduate environment. As an advocate team, our work is value-led and informed by both our individual and collective experiences and priorities. This programme will manifest in several types of support structures, the effects of which are already being felt in current student experience. So by the time you would be a student here, these effects would be even more established. So I definitely recommend the DTP as a good support to you if you are someone from an underrepresented community. Community and a feeling of belonging are really important when you're a PhD student. You are one person working on one project, and it can be quite isolating, which means being proactive rather than reactive is a good strategy. If you think about it, your job is to ruminate on your topic, which in many ways is a depressive process. You go over and over things until you get the idea or the output that you've been searching for, which then sparks the next thing to ruminate on. I think that giving yourself some sort of structure or routine can be a good way to manage this. For example, on a small scale, I aim to go for a walk most Monday mornings before I even start working on anything academic. It's a cheap energy boost and it's a good motivator for me. I try to manage my time well enough that I can walk the 40 minutes to campus rather than get the bus for the same reason. Thinking about belonging on a larger scale, last year I set up the ethnography group within the music department at my primary institution. I organised seminars from external speakers, and the 20 or so people in the group met roughly once a month. This helped my sense of belonging to an ethnographical community, to the music community in my department, and to a social community of other students and academic staff. I would consider myself an extrovert and fairly confident socially, so for me, setting this up was something that I was happy and prepared to put time and effort into. If you're thinking, oh my, that sounds terrifying, I wouldn't want to set anything up, but I would want to join something, then I suggest building in working on campus to your routine or attending seminars and other events in your department so that you get to know other people. I think it's fairly established that the most direct way to increase diverse perspectives in academic research is to fund projects that research non-normative and non-traditional topics, and also to fund students who are from marginalised and minoritised backgrounds. As a member of the queer community, I know that academia is largely not trusted to represent the needs of queer people, or to even include queer people in research about us, which is ridiculous when you really think about it. It was therefore important to me that I centred the voices of those in the queer community and my voice within this in my research. My lived experience of research and queerness directly contributed to the methodology of my project. This ethnographic methodology, in turn, feeds into how I analyse my dataset, and perhaps more importantly, helps contribute to a body of work in academia that is trying to address how queerness is researched and how to include queer individuals and communities in this. The main suggestion that I can make to you based on what I wish I had known before starting my PhD is: there is community out there for you, but be proactive in looking for it. Attend your welcome events and inductions, find research networks and centres and clusters and try them out. If you don't know anyone prior to beginning your studies, go and work in communal PGR spaces and go to social events organised by your institutions. But also beyond academia, get involved in the local city or town that you live in. Find events that interest you and go to them. Speak to people. Showing up for yourself by literally showing up and being visible in spaces is the easiest way to find and build your community and networks. Another piece of advice I have is to join mailing lists. So for example, I am a music student conducting ethnography, so I have joined the British Forum for Ethnomusicology mailing list. I have also joined the Oral History Society mailing list and the mailing list for their LGBTQ+ special interest group. Joining these lists means that I can keep up to date with conferences, lectures, seminars, workshops and trainings, both online and in person. These are events which build up my research toolkit and help me network. Of course, not everything is relevant, but it does map out what the field looks like. This means it also shows me gaps in the field, which in turn indicates what I might ask the DTP to investigate or to lay on regarding training. It also shows me that I could set something up that helps address this gap. So instead of letting the absence of something be a challenge, I can look at how, with organisational and financial support from the DTP, that becomes an opportunity for me to start something. Finally, I would say that setting boundaries is really useful and important. I am conducting trans research. Not every space is safe for me to do that in or to present that in. This might be relatable to you. Consider what the safe environments for you to be in are, and likewise what the unsafe environments are. You do not have to compromise your safety and well-being to have integrity as a person and a researcher. If a space is not safe for you or your research, make a judgment call about whether you want to be in that space. It can sometimes feel like you have to say yes to everything or you're wasting opportunities, but from my experience, this is almost never the case. Think about what you want and how you want you and your research to show up and make impact. Check in with the DTP Hub team if you need help. I have really enjoyed my PhD so far. I love my research and I love the opportunities I have to get my research out there. Everyone's PhD experience is different and there really is no right way to do it. So set the goals that you want to work towards and map out what you need to do to achieve them. Find your community and join the networks. Set your boundaries. If what you need doesn't exist, ask for help. And most importantly, remember that your PhD is exactly that. It's yours.